so many times we're triggered. And so we have a hard time maintaining our own self-regulation. And so we parent from that place of dysregulation, which again increases dysregulation in our child, right? One dysregulated person can't help regulate another. And so much of the behavior that our children are showing us are the result of dysregulation. So adding to it really isn't helping. So we need tools and strategies and skills and habit changes to focus on our own self-regulation. Mm-hmm. And then we need to understand that it's a set of skills that can be taught.
Hey there. Before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to tell you about a new group coaching program that I'm offering. Embrace Beauty After Grief. This program is designed for autism moms who need a safe space to work through their struggles and some of the daily challenges that we all face as an autism mom. You'll feel lighter and you'll gain some great insights along our 6 weeks journey together. So if this sounds like something you'd like to do, go ahead and go to mothersguidethroughautism.com and sign up. Welcome back to Mother's Guide Through Autism podcast. I'm Bridget Shipman, your host, and today I'm going to be speaking to Andrea Pollack. Andrea is a mom of 2 young adult children, a former lawyer in New York City, and an advocate for parents in autistic and other developmentally challenged children. When her autistic son was not thriving at school, Andrea left her 19-year law career to homeschool him. She later went on to earn a master's in education so that she could most effectively help parents get swift and lasting results without years of trial and error. Now, with years of experience and research under her belt, Andrea is sharing her wisdom with the world through Autism Parent Solutions. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Mother's Guide Through Autism podcast. I am Bridget Shipman, your host, and today I have the honor of speaking to Andrea Pollack. I'm so excited to have Andrea on Mother's Guide. We're going to have a great conversation, so welcome to Mother's Guide.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So we're just going to dive in. We are both moms and both professionals who have gone a different direction in our careers. So this is going to be I think a lot of moms will connect to this conversation. But let's begin with your personal journey with autism. Would you tell us about your son and his autism diagnosis?
Sure. So I noticed that his development seemed to be off, it had gone off the rails a little bit. And I started trying to get some attention for that. And I was told by the first neurologist we went to, he's fine, there's nothing wrong with him, stop being neurotic. That feels good. And eventually I got into a developmental pediatrician who diagnosed him with PDD-NOS, which at the time, HIJK-LMNOP, right? they were saying everything but autism. And she also said at the time, she thought it was so mild, he'd be indistinguishable from his peers in a year. And 7 months later, she was shocked at how autistic he was. Those were her words. So that was
makes your ears ring, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. That gave me goosebumps. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
So I have an idea of what your initial reactions were, but would you please share that? Because I think it helps to connect to everyone, to just kind of tell our stories. What were your initial reactions to his autism diagnosis? And what were some of the biggest struggles that you've experienced at the beginning of your journey?
Sure. Well, interestingly, my initial reaction was an odd combination of relief and terror. because I knew something was wrong, and professionals were telling me not to trust my instincts, and that felt very uncomfortable. And then I also worried that I was like pretending he had autism or something, like, or I was creating the autism in my brain, and that felt all wrong. So the initial relief was, okay, now we know what it is, we can do something about it. But the relief wore off very quickly. The
Yes.
terror persisted. And I just felt desperate to do everything right and do everything now. And at the time, I mean, this is still somewhat true, but it's a little bit less so now. But, the prevailing wisdom was, if you don't, if you don't resolve all of this by age 5, then there's no hope. And I felt that clicking clock like a time bomb and, weighing on me every day. So those were among the struggles.
Yeah, I can really relate to that because there's so much, that's why it's so important to share our stories, because I think there is so much misinformation out there. And, of course, we don't know. So we're also going to doubt ourselves, right? And it's just like that. And I'm pretty sure you would agree, but you can tell me. I tell moms, your intuition is like a superhero power strength. Do not let go. Listen to what you already know about your child.
100%. I 100% agree. And I do think sometimes when we're faced with something like this kind of diagnosis, we tend to want to rely completely on professionals, and we stop trusting ourselves. And that is one of the, I hate to use the term regrets, because it's all part of a learning process. It was all a building block to where I got to, but I wished I had realized that sooner for myself, which is why I like to help parents now realize that sooner.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, because where we're at is, it's like paying it forward, right?
Absolutely.
Because both of our kids are grown now. And so if we can help people with what we've learned and give them some strategies, right? I know too that you were juggling a law career in New York, and then you have it's so hard to balance career and motherhood anyway. But then when you have a child that has a lifelong disability, now it's so overwhelming. How did you manage or / not manage that, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, I thought I was managing, but for one thing, my child never slept, like never slept. And so I was running on fumes all the time. So that was a problem and probably clouded my judgment a bit.
Yes.
But I also thought I was managing because I thought, and again, this goes back to what we were just talking about, I thought all of the answers were external. I thought as long as I got the external services that he needed, as long as I got him in the right, the hands of the right professionals, that was my job. And it soon became clear that I was sorely mistaken about that.
Yeah. It's such a difficult time. And, I do grief work with moms, and the moms, it's interesting because even as far as we are on our autism parenting journey, there is still grief that walks with us, and how we manage that. Yeah, things are easier a little bit now. Well, there's always new challenges. Joseph's 31, but definitely at those beginning stages, there's a lot of there are hard times. And so we have to make life decisions. And you left your 19-year career as a lawyer to homeschool your son. What led you to that decision?
Well, it was part of this process that I'm talking about where, I initially tried to get all the services. I was part of a group of parents that helped to start a wonderful school, but I could see that he was not thriving. And eventually that noise got so loud, I could not ignore it anymore. And then it became an issue of like, there was no contest, which work was more important, right? A lot of lawyers, He only has one mom. And it was really scary though, because I was really good at my lawyer career and I had no idea what I was doing, what I was jumping into when I made this choice. But I knew I needed to do something different. Uh, he was withdrawing further into himself. The therapies didn't seem to be working. He was so sensitive. His sensory system was so sensitive that putting him into a school with lots of other autistic kids proved very challenging for him. And I knew I just needed to bring him home and figure it out.
Yeah, just to backtrack a little bit, for our listeners, when you said that your physician came back, your pediatrician, or the specialist you saw came back 7 months later and said, how autistic, where on the spectrum was your beginning to help us understand this big life transition that you did?
Yeah. Well, when he actually developed quite typically, and I know there are a lot of professionals who do not believe in or subscribe to the idea of regression, but he was fully talking, he was personable, he was charming, he was all of those things. And then the first thing that happened was his development sort of plateaued, which I knew was not supposed to happen with a 2-year-old. And I was getting advice like, he's a second child, he's a boy, relax. Then the neurologist said he was fine. And then this woman, the developmental pediatrician, said, she thought it was so mild, but I could see before my eyes, the talking basically stopped. Like it just completely, totally stopped. So I knew that this was not, so mild that he was going to, suddenly appear indistinguishable from his peers. So yeah, so he was he became quite challenged between the ages of 2 and 3, really.
Yeah. And that's when, I hear so many stories like that. And so there has to be something to it, right? Which I'm not the person to ask about it.
Same,
but
and I don't want to subscribe to any particular theories or not. I just think that there are too many stories to ignore all of the parents who had that experience.
Exactly.
And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. No, and I think that's why I do what I do, and you more than likely do what you do too, because we've been on this a while, this journey. And what's interesting to me is Joseph's 31 now. He was diagnosed at 3, and there's not that much change. I have learned that there's more therapies and so forth, but as far as the diagnosing and the parent support and those types of things, I'm amazed that we're not further in the game. But
well, actually, I think one big change, and I hope you'll agree with me or not, but when my son's 24, so 22 years ago when he was diagnosed, there wasn't a lot of material. The internet was like on the news side of things, right? There just wasn't that much there. And now I feel like parents, when they come to me, there's an overwhelming amount of information.
Yeah, no, I would.
And it's very hard to curate. So I think it's sort of one extreme to the other, but neither is very helpful.
Yeah. I agree with that. I guess what I mean is that you get the diagnosis and you're on your own.
Yes, I agree with that.
That is more of where my brain was, was that because I get moms and they're like, you just walk out and you're like, yeah, here's your diagnosis. Good luck. So, yeah. So you talk about your ineffective strategies that prolong negative interactions and unwanted behavior. Would you give us some examples?
Sure, there are many, but I'll leap to some of the top ones. One is parents often repeat a rule to a child over and over, especially when they're breaking it or after they break it. They do it in a harsh way, repeating the rule. And what I try to share with parents is that knowing the rule and having the skill to abide by the rule are two different things. Right? I believe that most of the time the children, they know the rule, right? They can repeat the rule, some of the kids,
Yeah.
right? They can repeat it
Yeah.
as they're breaking it. And what they're missing is either impulse control or, the ability to delay gratification, whatever it is. It's a skill. It's a series of skills we need to help them build so that they can abide by the rule. But if you keep, repeating the rule over and over, it increases stress, right? It causes additional dysregulation. It prolongs the behavior because you're targeting the wrong issue, in my opinion, most of the time. It doesn't mean that, very young children, they do need to learn the rules, and some kids may not understand, but a lot of times I just see that repetition of the rule. And another huge one, it relates, is believing that punishment is going to change behavior. And I'm not saying there's no room for punishment. Of course, some behavior is, it needs to be addressed in that way. But most of the time, again, they need skills to be built, and skills are not built through punishment, right? It's built through skill building.
Yeah. So with the parents that you work with, I get this question a lot. They don't know what is the disability and what is just the normal behavior that children do, right? And so they struggle with how to discipline their child.
Right.
Yeah, right. Do you get that?
And what I find is they go in one direction or another. Society, parents, families, schools often encourage parents to be more strict, right? Which in my experience really does increase the dysregulation, increases the friction, right? Other parents go in the other direction, like, oh, he can't help it, right? But that doesn't build the skill either. What they need is the help to grow. They need to be understood. They need to feel safe, and they need the help. They need to be pushed a little bit out of their comfort zone, right? It's not about letting it go and not helping it, but how do we help the child? Not how do we can't discipline the autism out of them. We need to help them grow in the ways they need to grow.
Yeah, I love that. During your 8 years of homeschooling, you learned some common principles and best practices to support your son. What were they?
Again, there are a lot, but I'm gonna try to hit on the top two, what I think are the top two.
Great.
One is that we need to model and teach self-regulation, right? That so many times we're triggered, and so we have a hard time maintaining our own self-regulation, and so we parent from that place of dysregulation, which again increases dysregulation in our child, right? One dysregulated person can't help regulate another. And so much of the behavior that our children are showing us are the result of dysregulation. So adding to it really isn't helping. So we need tools and strategies and skills and habit changes to focus on our own self-regulation. And then we need to understand that it's a set of skills that can be taught, right? Like we were touching on before, gratification delay, impulse control, things like that are all skills that can be built up over time, and that will help with all kinds of growth.
Yeah, that's important, I think, for parents to understand that it starts with ourselves. I didn't know that. I was just kind of in the thick of it, just trying to get through it like most of us. But I think understanding that now, it's such great advice for anyone.
And there are tools that you can learn to do it, because I know parents come to me, they say, I can't help it. And I say, I get that. I understand that. But there are tools that we can help you learn to interrupt it, change your habits, recognize it, etc. So that's the first one. The second one I would say is about setting your child up for success. Right? So many times we think we teach through failure, right? That failure is the way we learn. And I'm not saying it's not, but our kids get corrected all the time. They get told no all the time. They need to feel successful. It builds their self-esteem, and success breeds success. So we need to meet them where they are. Like sometimes we hold really high expectations, which in the scheme of things is okay for our eventual goals.
Right.
But if it's too far above where they are right now, they're not going to feel successful, and neither are we. It's frustrating for everybody.
Yeah.
So really being honest about where they are, and then trying to help them grow. It's not reducing expectation. It's meeting them where they are to help them eventually grow in increments they can tolerate
Mhm.
to the higher expectation.
Yeah. Yeah. Those 2 points are great pieces of advice. So, for our listeners, I think, whether you're anywhere in your life, those 2 things would apply. I coach a lot of moms who, haven't done the self-regulation or any of the work, and they're still carrying all this stuff around, which it does trickle down to the kids.
Absolutely.
So I love that. I love that you have the toolbox to guide them through it too, because it's easy to talk about, but then to apply it is where you win.
Exactly. Right. How many times have parents heard, like, don't yell at your child? Well, like, okay, like, I've heard that, but how exactly do I do that when I don't even want to come up with an example, like when things are going terribly sideways?
Oh yeah, because we are human with a lot. And
Exactly.
so that's much easier said than done.
Exactly. Well, I talk about that with parents all the time too. We are humans and we are humaning, right?
Yes.
This isn't about being perfect. This is about growing ourselves so that we can help our children grow.
Yeah, I love it. Tell us about Autism Parent Solutions.
Okay. Well, when my son was ready to go back to school, I knew that I had learned so much, and a lot through trial and error. And when I say trial and error, I mean trial and error, much more error. And I knew I could help parents avoid some of that if I could help, share my experience and my education. So I went back to school, got my master's in education, because I wanted to be able to share it in the most effective way possible. And what I found was missing in the marketplace, for lack of a better term, is a really immersive experience for parents where someone educates and supports you for an extended period of time, so that it's not like a one-off, go do this, right, or go do that. It's really about examining all of the habits, all of the places where you're confused, and helping you not only with the answer, but to learn the process of finding the answers for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So it was with that goal that Autism Parent Solutions was born. There are a lot of great, webinars and courses and things, and no disrespect to those. I think that's great. I was trying to add to and do something different for parents who found that even after they did some of those things, they were still struggling.
Oh yeah, I agree. It's because I was one of those parents. I hit all the conferences, which, oh my gosh, they were wonderful. I would feel better. I would get new information. And then it's like, now what?
Yes, right. So my program is, it's a very high level of support, which is what I found was really needed to create the transformation for the parents that I was looking to help them create, not the Band-Aids, not the, and again, I don't mean that disrespectfully. Like you, I went to all of those conferences. I felt great. And then when I realized I had to go back into my reality, it started to slip away, right? And then the next day I had another series of questions.
Exactly. And it is. That's why I refer to it as a journey, because it is. And we need guidance and tools and help as all the way. I mean, I still do. That's why I love doing this podcast, because I get to speak to people like you, and I'm always learning and being able to add to my toolbox as well. And so it doesn't end, but it's a good thing, because
Absolutely.
the more we share, more and more kids are being diagnosed. So there's plenty of work to do for all of us in our community. So
yeah, well, one of the things that I incorporate into my program is there's a group element. And part of that is designed, not only does it feel good to be with other parents who are going through something similar, but it accelerates the learning, because parents sometimes will hear a parent ask a different question and they didn't think to ask that question, and they learn from that, right? And it also helps them build their problem solving muscles, so that they're learning, as I said, the process of how to figure it out, because my goal is to help them become confident parents. And like I said, confident parenting is not perfect parenting. You're going to make mistakes. Things are going to go sideways, but you can come from a place of, I did the best job that I could, and it was a good job. It didn't always work out, but I'm confident in my choices.
Yeah, I love that. Let's give ourselves a little grace.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not easy. And that support piece is huge. What are some of the biggest lessons you've learned as a parent on this journey?
Well, I mean, in addition to some of the practical tools that I've already spoken about, because those were big lessons too, but I would say overall is that we have the capacity to reframe our experience, right?
Mhm.
I spent a lot of time getting dragged down by the idea that this was not what I signed up for, this was not what I had wanted. And over time, I really learned that I was in control of reframing that. And I realized that, no, I did not get exactly what I had hoped for. Actually, I got something better, right? Because I get to live a richer life and a deeper life. And I've grown more through my experience as Matthew's mother than any other experience I could have had. And when you flip that, understanding of your experience, it changes everything. And as you mentioned before, our kids are very sensitive, right?
Yeah.
And feel everything. And I know that when I feel like he's been my greatest teacher, my greatest gift, I have a daughter as well, and she has too, so I don't minimize her. But he feels that, right? If you're walking around feeling like this is heavy and this is a lot and this is hard, they feel that too.
Sure.
So understand, and then that opportunity to reframe your experience, you can apply it to every experience in your life. What a gift that is, right?
Oh yeah, that's great. That's great. Because I haven't met a parent that couldn't use that piece of advice. So I love it. Is there anything else you want to mention before we go?
Yeah, I mean, one of the messages I would love to leave with parents is that you are worthy of the education and support. I think sometimes parents think they have to devote everything to their children, put their children first. And this is putting your child first in a way, right? Maintaining your own worthiness creates that confident parent that you need to be the leader that your child needs. But your own worthiness is important. And I really hope that parents can connect with that message and believe it, because I talk to so many parents who don't feel worthy of investing in their own growth.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's an important point.
I love that you brought that up, because I see it too. And it is they want to. I think anyone who's listening to this is either has made that step and can feel the difference, in their life and their family dynamic. And then there are some that are just not quite there yet. So for anyone who hasn't gotten there yet, hear this, because you have two moms here, two professionals that are doing this work and have done the self-work. And if you can take that step and go out there, get the support, do this work, you're going to feel unbelievably lighter, and it's going to make your journey, to sound like I'm not in la la land. Like it will bring more joy to
Absolutely.
your life.
And to your children's lives.
Yes.
The change starts with us, right? And they feel all of our emotions. So attending to those emotions isn't selfish. It's actually beneficial for the whole family.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyone listening, reach out, which brings me to, where can they find you?
So the best place would be to my website, which is autismparentsolutions.com. There are resources there. There's a free masterclass that you can watch that goes into more depth about some of the things I learned and the strategies. There are opportunities if you know you want to work with a coach in an immersive, high support way, you can book a call with me to talk about it. That's autismparentsolutions.com/apply. I look forward to connecting with parents.
Yes, yes. And we'll also give you all the listeners the information so you can connect and work with Andrea and her mission, Autism Parent Solutions, in helping all of you. So thank you, Andrea. Thank you so much for being a guest on A Mother's Guide Through Autism. I hope you'll come back. Let us know how things are going. If you have some new programs, which I'm sure you're developing because you want to help more and more parents, right, on your journey. So hopefully you'll come back and visit.
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me. I've loved speaking with you. And I welcome the opportunity to do so again.
Wonderful. If you enjoyed this episode of A Mother's Guide Through Autism, please like and subscribe and help Joseph and I send our message of knowledge, hope, and inspiration. I'll see you in the next episode.